Hey there and welcome to DIY Projects with Pete. In today's episode, we're going to install a cable railing system out on our deck. And I want to thank Muzada for supplying the posts, the cable railing, and the hardware used in today's project. Definitely check them out if you're looking at options for your cable railing system. All right, let's go ahead and get to it. In today's episode, we'll walk through the process of measuring and planning out your railing system, adding blocking under each post, securing each metal post and tying into existing wood posts, doing the step area, installing and tightening the cabling, adding top rails, and we'll mix in tips and things I learned to hopefully help you install your railing system as smooth and efficiently as possible. We spend a lot of time together out on the deck as a family and with friends, barbecuing and enjoying the summer nights, and the cable railing system has been a safe solution and one that doesn't get in the way of your views. I started by unpacking the posts and hardware. There was quite a variety of hardware, so I got an organizer to help keep track of all the pieces. Now, having the posts all pre-made was really nice, as I made all my own posts from scratch for our other deck, and that was a lot of work. You can find that video linked to in the description below. Building our own posts did save quite a bit of money, but if you're looking for a DIY project without all the metal work and that extra time, this is a great way to build it. If you're planning a cable railing project, you'll want to measure the deck area or provide drawings to help figure out post spacing and locations. Muzada makes it really easy and has a free design service on their website to plan your railing project. All you need to do is head over to Muzada's site, which is linked to in the description below, share some information about your project, and then you can send additional measurements and photos so they can come up with a nice layout for you. I sent them a diagram I drew out on paper and a few photos, and then they'll design your railing system and send you a list of everything you need along with post locations, a quote for the cost of the railing system, and then additional information, which is going to help out a lot in getting this project started. You'll find there are lots of cable railing companies out there, so do your research and go with the one that's best for you. Muzada is one of the more affordable options I could find, and they have lots of options and systems to choose from. I did a modern look with the classic stainless steel colored cable, but their black cool system is one that also gives a modern look, and all the hardware is black, which looks nice as well. Check out the Black Cool link in the description to learn more, and you can also find their products on Amazon using the links in the description. These posts have an adjustable top mounting piece that attaches to the top of the post, and you'll want to make sure it's tight and square with the post, so use a crescent wrench to help align it if needed. I like to batch the processes together, so I assembled all the tops of the posts before moving on to the next step. There are 6x6 wood posts already on my home, so we're going to tie in the metal ones between those wood posts. I used a long straight edge and drew a line at the center point of the wood post so the new posts are aligned with it, and then I found the center point where the actual metal post would be attached. A hole was then drilled, which helps determine where blocking should be placed underneath the decking, and it can also serve as a drainage hole in case any water would get in the side holes of the posts, which I haven't had any issues with. I then put the posts in place temporarily to see how they would look. I crawled under the deck and looked for light coming through the holes I just drilled in the decking, and then used scrap pressure-treated boards to make blocking, which is going to provide additional support to strengthen the posts once they're mounted to the deck. And definitely take the time to do this so you don't have wobbly posts. A combination of 2x6 scraps and 4x4s were cut and then secured in place using long deck screws. Once the blocking is complete, it's time to make sure each post is lined up square, and then to mark and drill pilot holes where each of the 4 leg screws will attach at the base plate of the post. Put a washer on each leg screw, and then insert each one using an impact driver or a socket wrench, but don't fully tighten until you can see it look square. Then use a short level to see how plumb the post is, and tighten each screw until the post is plumb in each direction. Then repeat the process for each of the remaining posts. I'd find the center on the base plate and align it with the center line I'd drawn on the decking. Use a Sharpie to mark each hole location and then drill each hole. You can use a long drill bit to drill through the center hole and blocking to help with drainage if water ever enters the post. I cut a 1/4 inch thick piece of scrap wood to the same height as a metal post to use as a template to drill each hole for the railing into the 6x6 wood posts. I basically set a metal post on its side and then marked the template where each hole should be drilled. And a speed square helped with ensuring each hole was as accurate as possible. And then I drilled the holes into the template. It'd be nice if the manufacturer included a template such as this, but it only took a few minutes to make and it worked well. The template was then set up against the wood post, and I transferred the hole locations to it with a marker on each side of the wood post where the railing would connect. And now back to installing the metal posts. Take your time to ensure each post is plumb so it looks good when the entire system is assembled. There's a good chance your decking boards aren't perfectly level, so use a galvanized washer or two under the base plate as needed to level the plate and plumb up the post. After doing the first couple posts, you'll have the process down and it will go fairly quickly. I like to check the post with a level before screwing it down to see how plumb it is and how level the deck board is, and then I'll attach it and continue checking the post and tightening each leg screw. It takes a little trial and error to get each post perfect, but it's worth taking the time so your finished project looks great. As you can see, the inner deck board is slightly lower, so I slid 2 washers under the lower side as shims and then tightened it down. Our 2-year-old black lab named Maddie came to check out my work on the last part of this section, and as you can see, tightening each screw can adjust the post quite a bit to help get it perfect. There are lots of options for top railing, and Musada does make nice metal top rails in black or with wood grain looking finishes, but I chose to go with a 2x6 cedar board to match the railing on our existing deck and a better tie-in with the house. And you'll want to install the top rail before the cable, especially if you're doing metal posts only or posts that aren't tied into the actual structure of your home, as the railing will prevent your posts from leaning with the added tension of the cabling. Pocket holes were drilled on the underside of the ends of each 2x6 railing so that the screws can eventually secure the railing to the wooden posts and not be seen. Prior to adding the top railing, go ahead and slide over the plate covers to give the post base a clean look. I hadn't used Swageless hardware before, so I decided to do a test cable to see how it looked and how it worked. I used painter's tape to mark the depth on a spade bit and then drilled a hole into the wood as level as possible. Here's a close-up of how the hardware looks, and it's pretty sleek. Swageless hardware basically fits inside the post so it can't be seen, and it gives your railing system a much cleaner look than traditional hardware. I measured the distance between the 2 posts and added a couple inches so I'd have plenty of cable. The Swageless hardware was then attached to the first side and then inserted into the wood using a special tool. The washers that cover the post holes were then threaded on. I put the cabling through that center metal post, and then I attached the cabling to the far wood post using the same hardware. The washers have a sticky back to them, so you can simply slide it up against the post, and it's going to cover the hole and give it a nice finished look. The first test cable was easy to install and look good, so I started drilling the rest of the holes into each of the wood posts. You'll want to hold the drill as level as possible when drilling each of the holes, but it's straightforward and easy to do. You can adjust the depth of the hole according to how big your posts are. Repeat the process on each of the wood posts if you have any, and that template we made earlier will ensure all the holes are drilled accurately and that those cables will be nice and straight. The top rails for these sections were then set in place. Screws were used to fasten the ends to each wood post, and the center is then held up by the metal post. My spans between the wood posts are between 7 and 8 feet total, and with the metal post in the center, the board spans about 3 to 4 feet without additional support. And this has held up well without sagging issues on a deck I did 3 years ago. And check to ensure the railing is level and looks straight to the eye. I then attached the center post from the underside. The supplied screws were Phillips, and I'm not a big fan of them since they can strip easily, so I just used some 1-inch long screws with the star head that I had laying in the garage. I was ready to begin adding cable to these sections, so I got to work on preparing the hardware. There are quite a few little pieces, and it was the middle of winter when this was installed, so my wife and I turned on the TV, cracked a bottle of wine, and assembled all of the hardware inside where it was warm and where we could find the little screws if they got dropped. Musada does make other types of hardware that can be crimped with a special hydraulic crimper or a swage tool if you prefer not to deal with all the small pieces. In the end, the product turned out great, and we were really happy with it, but assembling the hardware was a bit time consuming and straining on the eyes. We do love how clean the railing system does look with that Swageless system, and not having to purchase the additional crimping tool with this style of hardware will save you some money. I decided to figure out the stairs section next, so I'd get that part out of the way. The biggest thing here was to get the posts aligned with each other. I spaced them about 2.5 inches in from the side of the steps and used a long level as a straight edge to double check that the posts were aligned. Once I was happy with the placement, I marked the location of the post base and where the holes would be located. Now, I actually made a mistake here, and I should have placed the post closer to the front of each step because the lowest cable ended up almost touching the top front corner of each step. So I redid each step post off camera, but learned from my mistake and placed the step posts closer to the front, as I'll show later. Like the other posts, a hole was drilled where each one will go to help show where the blocking needs to be installed from the underside. And once that upper blocking was installed, the stair treads were removed so that blocking could be put in under each of the stair posts. Pressure-treated wood was used for the blocking, and then long screws secured the blocking in place. When the decking is ready to go back on, line up the screws with the old holes so they go back in the exact same spot. The 4 holes were then drilled for each post, and remember to place the step posts farther toward the front than I'm showing here so that your lowest cable clears the steps without an issue. I'm not going to go in depth about installing the remaining posts since it's done similar to the previous ones, but basically I secured the top platform and stair posts with the leg screws into the blocking, and then I checked to make sure each was plumb and aligned correctly. The plate covers slide on easily to cover the leg bolt heads. We got some snow overnight, so I cleared off the driveway with the skid steer and then did a quick sweeping of the steps. Next, I tested out the cabling on that step area. It's hard to see, but the cabling barely cleared the nose of the step, and it's not a huge deal, but I definitely wanted it a little bit higher. So I ended up removing each of the 6 posts in the step area, patching the holes, moving the blocking, and then repositioning the posts so the front of the plate was about an inch in from the front of the tread. And here's a shot of the finished lower cabling this summer, and you can see it's about 2 inches or so higher than the front of the tread, which looks a lot better. Now we'll get back to installing the cable railing. There are a total of 10 cables for each section, and they're spaced 3 inches apart for our 36-inch tall railing system. You'll want to start by adding the middle cables first, and then moving outward toward the top and bottom, alternating each time. There are a few times I actually forgot to alternate, so don't do exactly as I'm showing with the next few cables in this video, but that's what's recommended and will help get the correct tension the quickest. I used the CB16 Swageless wood tension hardware to go into each post. The cable was cut a little longer than the span between the posts, so the hardware could be attached and then inserted into the post. I measure everything by eye and adjust the hardware and cut the cabling as needed. Adding the remaining cable is done similarly. Just alternate the cables as I'd mentioned and make sure to thread the washer onto the cabling so they cover the holes on each side of the posts. Musada does have all sorts of rails to choose from, and they sent a nice metal rail with a wood grain finish, but it didn't match my existing railing that well, so I ended up buying 2x4 cedar boards, ripping them down in width, and then rounding over the tops with a router. I then test fit the rails and held them in place with clamps so I could mark the hole locations where each post would be attached. Taking the pivoting part off the post makes it much easier to attach the railing to, since the actual post gets in the way of your drill when attaching it to the underside. Once the hardware is attached, I then fit everything in place before staining it, just to double check that everything was lined up properly. The transition railing was a little trickier, but I just made angled cuts and then bent a bracket and used screws to hold the boards tight to each other. Prior to permanently installing, I used an oil-based whitewash stain to match the color of the home and the rest of the railing. The rest of the cabling for the first section was then installed in an alternating fashion, and each cable should be nice and tight without any sag to it. The next section is between two wood posts again, with one at the corner. Start by putting the screw-looking piece on the cable first, followed by the locking piece, which has set screws. Tighten those set screws and then use the tool to insert it into the wood, making sure it is in just past the opening of the hole. The little tool fits over the cable and turns the piece with the threading. Then go ahead and pull the cable to the other side and cut it a bit long. Then slide the hardware on and use the Allen wrench to tighten the set screws once you've lined it up with the post to see that that length looks good. Cut off the excess cable if there is any, and go ahead and tighten up that cable. The section on the end uses the same hardware on the right side where the wood post is, but it uses different hardware on the left side. Start with one of the middle rows as usual and work until every row is complete. Here's an up-close view of the CB05 hardware that hides inside the end of the metal post. You'll insert the cable into it, tighten the set screws, and then you can remove the black screw and push the piece through the hole in the post. Then use that black screw on the end to secure it in place, and there is some wiggle room to tighten the cable from this side of the hardware if you need to. I was able to add tension from the wood post side, so I just tightened the cable on that end. Now that the stain on the railings was dry, the hardware was reattached, and I put the railings in place for the stairs. Simply put the screw back in the top of each post to secure the railing. Then it was time to do cabling for the stairs using the CB05 hardware again. You'll notice that the stair posts have holes that are slightly higher on the back side so the cable is able to go up at an angle. And there is a nice angled piece on the front side that looks classy and gives the hardware a real professional look. The cabling is threaded to the top, and it can only be tightened from one side using this specific setup. Getting the exact cable length correct will take some trial and error, but start by cutting the cable a little longer than needed since you can always cut it shorter. I tightened it up using the cable tightener and the Allen wrench they provided. I'm sliding over this little angled piece, which dresses up the connection and looks really nice in my opinion. Just make sure the set screws are countersunk so the piece slides over easily. Then it's all about repeating the process for the rest of the cables on each side of the steps. For the upper portion of the steps, the cable makes an angled turn at the transition, and there's a wheel protector sleeve that goes over the cable and in the post holes at the transition posts, which prevents cable abrasion. For the end of the section, a toggle style hardware was used. You basically need to bend the cable and then push the toggle into the hole. There are different combinations of hardware that can be used, but this CB17 toggle works great with all different angles, and it's what Musada recommended for my setup. The other end uses the CB05 hardware and is the side that can be tightened. And one thing I wanted to mention is if you are using the Swageless hardware, you will want to tighten the set screws in the order the manufacturer recommends to ensure it has the best grip on the cable. The black screw can then be inserted in the hardware, and the cable can be tightened. Here you can see I'm pushing in one of the wheeled protector sleeves that just will pop right in. Then I finished with the rest of this section. About this time, my wife and the little guy were out for a spin on the sled and stopped to say hi. Once the last section was complete, I went back to a couple of the cables that needed to be tightened up more. It's recommended to tighten the middle cables and then work outward to the top and bottom in an alternating fashion until the cable tension is how you want it. There were a few final touches to finish up with, and then the cable project was complete until this spring. Cable rail systems need very little maintenance in general, but from time to time you might need to tighten up a few of the cables, and to do this, just pull off the washer, tighten the cable as needed, and push the washer back in place. Lastly, a fresh coat of solid color deck stain went on, and it was time to start putting the newly renovated deck area to use. This project has been a long time coming as I've slowly remodeled our 1970s split-level home, replaced and added cable railing to our back deck, and finally fixed up the front porch area and added railing. But it's definitely been worth it, and it gets a lot of use by our family. Thanks so much for taking the time to check out today's video, and I hope it inspires you to put in a cable railing if you're wanting a system that looks great and helps maintain your view. Thanks again to Mazada for supplying the materials used in today's video. You can find more information about the railing system along with a discount code in the link in the description below. Take good care and good luck with your upcoming projects.